Once introduced Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. There is so much to say about her. She proudly represents the working people of Ohio's 9th Congressional District, and she is currently the longest serving woman in the history of the U.S. House of Representatives and ranks among the most senior members of the 116th, soon to be 117th Congress. Fought vigorously on energy and water development. Also serves as senior member of the powerful House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense. And more importantly, one of the co-chairs of the Ukrainian Congressional Caucus. There's much more that could be said about Congresswoman Kaptur. She has won all of her election overwhelmingly because she first and foremost represents the people of her district. Yet, she always finds time to help and perhaps represent the people of Ukraine. I remember first seeing Congresswoman Kaptur in 1982 when she testified to support the creation of the Commission on the Famine in Ukraine, the Holodomor. And this became the first effort of a government to recognize the Holodomor. And she has not stopped since then. I'm really grateful that she always finds time to meet with any Ukrainians that come through. And she has visited Ukraine many times and is always looking at ways to help not only the people of her district, but the people of Ukraine. It is my great pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur.
Thank you so very much, Nadia McConnell, my dear friend and a true liberty lover who has spent her life fighting for the rights of people in a very faraway place from the United States, but truly the scrimmage line for liberty in Europe today. Thank you, and thank Bob for understanding what is at stake, not just for Ukraine, but for our country and for all of Europe. You are in the right fight. And let me just express my deep gratitude to Ambassador Yelchenko, to Senator Portman, and to all those who are participating today, and to the U.S. Ukraine Foundation for sponsoring this really important conversation at this point in history. I was thinking as Senator Portman was talking that my first trip to Ukraine was in 1973 as a very young woman, driving our mother across Europe to try to find the shreds of our own family, which had been blocked for decades. And we drove, and the further we drove into Europe, across borders, into Soviet controlled territory, that trip is probably one reason that I have become a member of the Congress of the United States. I have seen the world of the past, and I now am observing and being a decision maker in the world of the present. And so really my experience with Ukraine has sustained me my entire life, though I am not technically Ukrainian American, I'm of Polish American heritage. Nonetheless, the complexity of that history is well described in Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder, a great American scholar and author. It gives us a sense of what it takes to build a free society. As co-chair of the bipartisan Ukrainian Caucus in the House, I want to thank again the U.S. Ukraine Foundation for hosting this event, and for all the panelists who are participating and who have a commitment to advance democratic institutions here at home as well as abroad. People matter, and their futures matter, and they should have the opportunity to advance under a system, a rule of law that is indeed enforceable, and not just an autocratic system that forces them to live in a certain way. During this holiday season of reflection and political transitions, I really do believe we have this opportunity to think critically on lessons learned and what more we can do to support Ukraine and the people of Ukraine. After 4 years of turbulent and rudderless foreign policy under the Trump administration, I am so grateful for President-elect Biden, and am confident that the work that he and senators like Senator John McCain and others have done on the European continent, fully understanding what American families gave for the freedom of Europe. And I'm confident in our joint ability on a bipartisan basis to support Ukraine. As always, I've said President Biden doesn't need training wheels on these issues. As you well know, Ukraine is the scrimmage line for liberty in Europe, as I've mentioned. And that road has at many times been jagged as it is today. But the Ukrainian people's perseverance and your perseverance as the U.S. Ukraine Foundation are an inspiration to liberty lovers everywhere. Tragically, since the 2014 Maidan Revolution, over 14,000 Ukrainians have died at the hands of brutal Russian aggression, which we know too well. Millions more have been displaced. And we hope that the Ukraine leadership, those people who are inspired to create a better country, will take the critical steps forward because of your advocacy and support. In our Congress, we have led efforts to restore liberty in Ukraine by providing robust support for the Ukrainian people. As a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, I'm especially pleased to report that our House of Representatives voted to increase strategic assistance to Ukraine earlier this year. This includes $275 million for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, up $25 million. And additionally, we provided $255 million for anti-corruption and development assistance, a $5 million increase. So the support of the American people remains, and we have to assure that those funds are properly spent and not pilfered or diverted from their intended purpose. These funds are currently being negotiated in a final conference agreement that will come before the House and Senate, I believe, this week, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to maintain these key increases. This support for Ukraine is so important, not only for Ukraine's security, but to protect American security, U.S. security, because Ukraine is such a vital challenge point for liberty on the face of the globe. For this reason, we must remain committed to help Ukraine defeat both internal and external enemies of liberty, particularly the rapacious class of oligarchs and Russian aggression on many fronts, including cybersecurity, where even we saw our own country was attacked over this past week on the cybersecurity front. I'm going to make some very brief comments now about reform, as well as veterans, defense, energy, and the cyber world. First on reform. When President Zelensky was elected with a strong mandate to carry out needed reforms, I joined many liberty lovers in congratulating him and hoping that the younger generation was headed in the right direction. Unfortunately, I have deep concerns with significant backsliding in reforms as the oligarch class once again has reasserted itself in Ukraine's politics. In early March, several senior members of the Ukrainian government's cabinet were dismissed, including key reform-minded ministers and heads of agencies. Many of their replacements lacked the credentials and expertise to lead the reform efforts. This government reshuffling was coupled with a visible slowing pace of reform. Most troubling, I observed intensified and targeted political investigations into pro-reform figures in retribution for their efforts to cut off corrupt cash flows to Ukrainian government officials. Key state institutions like the Security Service of Ukraine, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office have come under increasing pressure. Oligarch influence over the National Bank of Ukraine led to the resignation of the head of that organization. The Zelensky administration must recommit to critically needed anti-corruption reforms to make good on the promises he made to the people of Ukraine. We in the United States must continue to provide tough love to the Ukrainian authorities to show we stand with them in their fight against rapacious oligarchs. This includes enhancing the capacity of the Verkhovna Rada through increased legislative exchanges, including through our Open World program, where we hope to make progress. We must also continue to professionalize the Rada by establishing a Rada research service so that members of the parliament can best serve their constituents and make fully informed policy decisions. There's a lot of work to be done on that front. Key reforms must also include enhancing inclusivity of the agricultural market by lowering financing rate for farmers, including rural women farmers in Ukraine who are feeding the country's people during these times of significant duress. Very quickly, let me just turn to veterans for a second and veterans care. In the face of Russia's continued aggression and malign influence, we must enhance Ukraine's resilience and capacity for self-defense. And that includes regard and respect for Ukraine's veterans. Ukrainian service members are on the front lines protecting Ukraine's territorial sovereignty. Many serve multiple tours, yet lack the psycho-social and medical care and job integration so necessary to support as veterans. So we have to boost veterans' care in Ukraine to boost readiness of the Ukrainian forces. When I was in Ukraine in 2018, I visited with a family outside of Zhytomyr. The father had served in the Soviet army during the invasion of Afghanistan. His son had just come back from his third tour on the front lines in the Donbass. But the father and the son shared with me their own problems of post-traumatic stress and the lack of support services available to Ukrainian veterans like him. For this reason, we must increase exchanges with Ukrainian American doctors and medical caregivers for veterans who can help enhance the capacity of veterans care in Ukraine. I was also pleased to help establish a $5 million State Department program to boost the capacity of the Veterans Ministry to care for veterans with the proper skills. This program will help set up an e-registry for the first time in Ukraine's history to fully understand the scope and needs of Ukraine's veterans population. We must brainstorm more and define what we can do in addition. Quickly, in terms of defense and especially strengthening naval deterrence, our country, the United States, should think strategically in emerging theaters surrounding Ukraine. This includes developing a more robust Ukrainian naval presence in the Black Sea to deter Russian aggression. The world witnessed Russia's naval aggression during its assault on Ukrainian vessels in the Kerch Strait, and we must ensure that Ukraine and the free world is better prepared. Through a Mosquito fleet, Ukraine's Navy can help thwart Russian attempts to make further inroads into Ukraine's territorial waters and protect Ukraine's important access to international shipping lanes. In terms of energy security, which again is a defense issue, I have successfully led advocacy to place sanctions on Nord Stream 2, and Ukraine must develop its own internal resilience. This includes developing a national energy security strategy to invest in clean energy and domestic power generation through many sources, including natural gas. Ukraine must implement reform in its energy sector to attract foreign capital. And recently, the government of Ukraine has broken its contracts with key international green companies. This is a significant step backwards and undermines Ukraine's standing as a place to do business. I was pleased to pass House Resolution 672, supporting the 3 Cs initiative to boost infrastructure resilience and energy security in Central and Eastern Europe. And while Ukraine is currently not a member of this initiative, there are opportunities to ensure Ukraine also benefits from increased regional interconnectedness. This could include natural gas interconnectors with Poland or electric grid enhancements with Hungary. Quickly, in terms of cyber and telecommunications security, we must ensure Ukraine's cyber and telecommunications lines remain secure from malign Russian and Chinese influence. Just this week, as I mentioned, Russia hacked into key U.S. federal agencies. And we know Ukraine is Russia's playground for hybrid cyber operations, so Ukraine can teach us key lessons on how to fortify our own networks. To ensure security of telecommunications networks in Central and Eastern Europe, I was thrilled to introduce the bipartisan Transatlantic Telecommunications Security Act with my Republican colleague, Adam Kinzinger. This bill would provide U.S. financing to help European allies and partners secure their telecommunications infrastructure without using compromised equipment from malign actors like China. I am grateful for the incoming Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman, Gregory Meeks of New York, for being an original sponsor on this measure. I look forward to working with my colleagues like Mr. Meeks to bring this critically needed legislation to the floor for swift passage. While Ukraine works on advancing a national artificial intelligence strategy, we know that artificial intelligence will change the nature of the battlefield. And given Ukraine's robust tech sector, Ukraine has a unique opportunity to strengthen its competitive advantage in this key strategic sector. In concluding, I look forward to working with all of you on implementing these key priorities on a bipartisan basis. President-elect Biden and his team have been stalwarts of Ukraine, so I have no doubt these next 4 years will yield great opportunities strengthen the U.S. Ukraine relationship And I cannot thank enough Nadia McConnell and Bob McConnell and the U.S. Ukraine Foundation for hosting this very timely, and I would say critical conference. Onward Liberty, Onward Ukraine, Slava Ukraina.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Kaptur. You, I think, would allow a few questions?
I'd be pleased to, certainly.
Okay. You mentioned a new chairmanship with the Foreign Relations Committee. And so, this is a new convocation of Congress, and there have been some changes, of course, in different position leadership. And of course, we still hope and depend on the bipartisan support. How do you see these changes? I must say I was pleased to hear that you have already engaged with Congressman in your work. But if you want to say just a few words about how you see this new Congress.
Well, I think that the margin is very close in the House. And of course, we're still seeing elections completed for the Senate. So regardless of what happens, it will be a very, very close vote in both chambers. And I think it's important. We don't have that many new members coming in. And I think those who care about Ukraine can visit those individuals, and they'll still be selecting which committees they will be on. That isn't sorted out yet. That's happening as we speak. So there will be many appointments made. But honestly, Congressman Meeks, who will head our Foreign Affairs Committee, has traveled to Europe extensively. And there's a huge Ukrainian American population in New York, as well as surrounding countries. I mean, name any one: Hungary, Armenia, Poland. So he's very familiar with the ethnic and racial diversity of his region of the country. The United Nations is located there. So I think that we really have someone on our side of the aisle who is very well traveled and will provide real leadership. I don't know what will happen on that committee with succession on some of his subcommittees. That's all in the works right now as new people are appointed. But I'm very optimistic, and with the Biden administration, I am really looking forward to the opportunity to have individuals in place who have a deep history and understanding of Europe's history and of what we face in terms of Russian aggression. And so I'm looking for a more cooperative spirit within the executive branch. But I'm hopeful in the Senate. We have many supporters of Ukraine. I would have to look to Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, who keeps Ukraine under one wing over on the Senate side. Obviously, Senator Portman from my own state. There's a bipartisan an effort in the Senate as well. So I'm very hopeful that we will have even more attention paid to Ukraine as we move forward.
Well, thank you for those very encouraging comments. But I do want to bring up also, I believe that Chairman Smith has talked about some of the challenges for the overall defense budget in terms of just how do you see that and its possible impact on assistance for Ukraine?
Well, I think that with the Biden administration, we are going to get a different set of proposals that come forward. I would have to say during the Trump administration, the defense budgets have been significant and important. I don't agree with all their priorities, but we have really, over a period of the Obama and the Trump administration, strengthened the U.S. military. I think President-elect Biden was a very important part of those submissions from the Obama-Biden administration. So you don't need anybody with training wheels coming into the Oval Office. And so I am very optimistic about what the administration will submit. In terms of the Congress itself, the average member of Congress has about 6 years seniority or less. And on the Republican side of the aisle, they have a rule where they can't serve as chairman for more than 6 years. You can hardly learn a jurisdiction in 6 years. They are so complex. And so what I'm saying in terms of the House, that rule does not exist on the Democratic side of the aisle. However, you have people who and many new members who were elected a couple years ago, for example, who need familiarity with this arena of discussion. Most of them will not serve on the foreign relations committees. And so there's always opportunity to go visit a member, to make an impression, especially when they're a new member. They have a high learning curve. And so I would say for the members of the U.S. Ukraine Foundation, for Ukrainian delegations coming in and so forth, it's very, very important to make contact with your member of Congress. We have an institution that's it's more like the stock exchange. There's a lot of activities down there on the floor all the time, and members have their own committees. They get absorbed in the activities of those committees, and I think Ukraine has to, and its allies in our country. And by the way, you've been very good at that. Very, very good. Visiting members, making Ukraine's challenges more, to clarify those to members of the House. And I would urge you to continue that.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Kaptur. And of course, you've already said that. And we also remind people that supporting Ukraine is in our U.S. interest and as well for the free world. So it is, it's a two-way street in terms of benefits. So that's something we have, that message we have to keep pressing on. And as you've noted, President-elect Biden has made numerous trips to Ukraine and is familiar with, very familiar with Ukraine. So we look forward to progress in the areas that you have mentioned, and also the areas I think that the ambassador has mentioned. I would like to say here that one of the things we hope that will come about is that there would be more of the bilateral agreements signed within the strategic partnership, because some of them have lapsed. And so we hope, we trust that there will be more focused attention on that aspect as well. Does Ambassador, would you, do you have a question for Congresswoman Kaptur, or would you like to make some remarks?
Thanks.
No? Okay. Well, Congresswoman Kaptur, again, thank you so much for your steadfast devotion, like I said, not only to your district, but for the people of Ukraine. And we look forward to continuing our wonderful working relationship moving forward. Thank you.
And you have a very blessed holiday season, and may the good spirit pervade our works as we move into the year of 2021.
Yes, thank you.